She will grow up to be a very beautiful maiden. But you must never refer to her as the pumpkin girl. A long time ago, in a beautiful African village, there lived a rich farmer, Okonkwo, who had many servants and 2 wives, Ego and Ngozi. Ego had 2 children, Opara and Nonye. Ngozi had none. She was always sad because Ego would always taunt her for her childlessness. However, a day came when Ngozi could not take it anymore. It was during the harvest season. Okonkwo had raked in a great harvest of crops, the fattest yams, fresh corn, cassava, and assorted fruits. After he took out what was to be sold and stored, he gave portions to his wives. To Ngozi, he gave twice the portion he gave Ego because he loved her more and felt pity for her childlessness. Ego was upset, but she held her peace in their husband's presence. But when the 2 women were alone, Ego told Ngozi, "You think eating plenty yams will put a child in your dead womb? I came to meet you in this house. I've given birth twice. You continue to eat yam, useless woman." The words pierced through Ngozi's soul like poison knives. She wept all through the night. She saw herself as useless to her husband and to the community. She had no reason to live anymore. She decided to end it all before dawn, but she would do so by her mother's grave. She had to talk to someone, dead or alive. Mama Ngo's grave was 30 minutes away in her late husband's compound, now her only son's compound. Ngozi snuck quietly into the compound. The place brought back childhood memories. She could still hear her mother singing to her and her brother while she told them moonlight stories. Ngozi settled by her mother's grave and wept. She whispered through her sobs, "Mama, life has been unfair to me. Life has only brought me shame. I want to come and be with you." She brought out a small medicine bottle from her wrapper. She opened the bottle and tries to drink the content. Then someone called her name. She froze in shock and quickly turns around to see an old woman with long gray hair. "Who are you?" she asked in fear. "Just an old woman who wouldn't mind her own business," the old woman replied. Ngozi is confused. "What do you want?" "I'm busy." "I can see that," the old woman said. "But I think it is better to die trying to have a baby than trying to die because of what your senseless rival wife said to you." Ngozi was shocked. How did she know all these? "How do you know that? Who are you?" The old woman smiled and said, "What I know is not my business, and how I know is not your business." With that, she turned to leave. "Wait," Ngozi called out. "What do you mean by die trying to have a baby?" The old woman smiled again. "Have you heard of the swamps of Igodo? There, a woman can get her heart desires, but you must survive the 7 spirit warriors who guard the sacred garden to get it." The old woman disclosed, "But nobody has ever made it back alive," Ngozi laments. "Why should that bother you?" asked the old woman. "Were you not trying to kill yourself a while ago?" Ngozi frowns at her. The old woman was right. Her life was meaningless without a child anyway. At this point, she would do anything to have a child, even if it meant dying. "How do I get there?" Ngozi asked the old woman. "Come closer and I'll tell you," the old woman said. The mystical swamps of Igodo. Ngozi, hiding behind a giant cocoyam leaf, couldn't believe what her eyes were seeing. Only in her mother's stories had she heard of a place as supernatural as this. She had followed the old woman's instructions. After chanting the words she taught her, Ngozi had found herself on Magical Path Road. She had kept herself hidden, traveling between the bush shrubs as the old woman instructed her. She was now at the first spirit warrior's post and began to walk boldly towards the large mystical creature. In all the old woman had taught her, she warned against showing fear of death. After all, Ngozi wanted to end her own life. What is the worst that could happen? As she came closer, the spirit warrior charged at her, enveloping her with thick, dark smoke. When the smoke cleared, there was Ngozi, unfazed and chin arched with resolve. The spirit warrior was shocked. "Who are you? I sense no fear of death in you. Those who come here usually have something to live for, something that makes them afraid of death," said the spirit warrior. "I do have something to live for," said Ngozi. "It is behind you on the other side. You must let me pass." "Aha!" said the spirit warrior. "The sacred garden is what you seek. Then a spirit's riddle you must speak. But be careful, if you get my riddle wrong, you will be turned into a pile of dung." "Say your riddle," Ngozi challenged him. The spirit warrior filled the place with black smoke again as he gave his riddle. "What does man love more than life and fear more than death? What does the poor have and the rich require?" Ngozi was calm and silent. "Answer me!" roared the spirit warrior. "Your answer!" Ngozi said calmly, "Is nothing. Man love nothing more than life and fear, nothing more than death. The poor has nothing, and the rich require nothing." The spirit warrior was shocked. She had answered his riddle. "How did you know the answer to my riddle?" he asked. "What I know is not my business, and how I know is not your business," Ngozi replied. With that, the spirit warrior stepped aside and allowed her to pass. Ngozi continued on her way and soon came to the post of the second warrior, the fire maker, so Ngozi was told. He glared at Ngozi as she approached without fear. The spirit warrior brought out great fire. It burned everywhere, but Ngozi remained calm. "What do you seek in the sacred swamp?" the fire maker demanded. "Speak up, or my fire will consume you." "Your fire is nothing compared to my desire," said Ngozi. "My yearning burns hotter than your flames." "Then your desires will be tested," said the fire maker, "and your yearning put on trial. If your heart is not pure, you will have sicknesses without cure." Ngozi was alarmed to hear this. The old woman never told her of this. She didn't know if her heart was pure. All the time she ever wanted children was to spy to Ego, her rival wife. Was that pure? "Do you still want to proceed, or have you way-hid your heart and found yourself wanting?" asked the spirit warrior. Ngozi was silent. For the first time, she had become afraid. I will proceed," said Ngozi. "I have come this far already." "As you wish," said the spirit warrior. And with that, he enveloped Ngozi with refiner's fire to test the content of heart. Ngozi screamed in agony as the fire searched her soul. She fell and collapsed to the ground. The fire maker watched on. Then Ngozi rose up to her feet and stood before him. The fire had weakened her, but her resolve remained. "You survived it," he said to her. "Yes," Ngozi said. "I desire a child not to spite my rival wife, but to show her love, as my mother showed me." "Well done," said the spirit warrior, "but be warned. The next warrior you'll meet, solving of riddles and good intentions cannot persuade him." And with that, the fire maker stepped aside and allowed her to pass. Ngozi continued on her journey and came to the last post guarded by the third spirit warrior. As soon as they saw her, a terrible thunderstorm broke out. Lightning bolts zapped everywhere. Ngozi quickly took cover under a giant cocoyam plant. She was terrified. The old woman and the second spirit warrior had warned her about this one, the furious spirit warrior of thunder and lightning, the one who was hard to pacify. The thunderstorm continued to rage, destroying all the plants. Soon, it would destroy Ngozi's cocoyam and Ngozi herself. She had to do something. But what? The old woman had said a solution will come to her in the moment. With a deep breath, she summoned all her courage and stepped out from her hiding place. "Stop!" she shouted over the roaring thunder. "I come in peace, seeking the blessing of the sacred swamp." The spirit warrior halted his onslaught, surprised by Ngozi's boldness. "Why should I grant you passage when you dare to challenge my wrath?" he thundered. "I seek not to challenge, but to understand. I know the power of the storm, but I also know the calm after it. I seek balance, not conflict." Ngozi pleaded. The spirit warrior considered her words. "You speak wisdom, woman of the village," the spirit warrior declared. "But to prove your sincerity, you must face my trial." Ngozi nodded, readying herself for whatever test awaited her. "Tell me," he said, "what is the source of life and the end of time?" Ngozi listened carefully, her mind racing. The old woman had not prepped her for this, but all she had faced in life had brought her to this moment. She closed her eyes and spoke with conviction. "The source of life is the breath of the Creator, and the end of time is the embrace of eternity." The spirit warrior fell silent by Ngozi's profound answer. "You have proven yourself worthy and showed understanding," he said. "Come, I will give you your heart desire." And with that, the spirit warrior led Ngozi further into the mystical swamp. They came to the sacred garden and stopped in front of enchanted pumpkin plants. The spirit warrior plucked one and gave to Ngozi. "When you get home," he instructed, "cover it in a basket, and by daybreak it will become a beautiful baby girl." Ngozi held the pumpkin close to heart. "She will grow up to be a very beautiful maiden." The spirit warrior continued, "None shall be as beautiful as she." "But," the spirit warrior paused to warn, "you must never refer to her as the pumpkin girl. Do you hear?" "Yes, sir," Ngozi replied. "The day anyone calls her the pumpkin girl, she will return to this swamp and you will never see her again." Ngozi promised him, "No one will even know where she's from, so no one will call her the pumpkin girl." "It is up to you," said the spirit warrior. "Now go with your heart desire." Ngozi woke up with a start. She was in her room. "What? Don't tell me I have been dreaming," she thought out loud. It had felt so real. Then she saw the pumpkin from the sacred garden right beside her. Her eyes widened with excitement. She quickly found a basket and covered the pumpkin just as the spirit warriors instructed. Throughout that night, she couldn't sleep. She watched over the basket with anticipation. The loud crow of the cock woke her with a start. It was daybreak and she had dozed off watching the basket. She quickly rushed to the basket and opened it. There was the most beautiful baby girl Ngozi had ever seen. Ngozi held her close to her chest, tears of joy flowing down her cheeks. "I will love you as my mother loved me. Your name will be Neka," Ngozi said, squeezing the baby tight.